I think I was completely convinced at the time of the discussions with the National Commission. And bear in mind, Michael Yesley had given me, so to speak, final staff authority for the preparation of the Belmont report as it went to the commissioners. So if there's something in there that's wrong, it's my fault, as it were. So when I say I was completely convinced about the boundaries section, I thought it was very solid work. And I not only believed it at the time, but I believed it for many years thereafter, as I worked on the research practice distinction. And I think I thought that the people before Belmont, and there were a number, who would write on the subject of research and practice and who would make them closely connected, what I now think of as an integration model of the relationship between research and practice rather than a segregation model. I thought this was just weak thinking. It was just weak thinking before we came along with the National Commission, and we sort of figured out what the real boundaries were. And it is true, I think the National Commission was the first to think very, very seriously about how to delineate the boundaries. I think that's fair to say. On the other hand, as Ruth and I in particular began to discuss these problems at a certain point, I'm not sure exactly what the certain point was, but it's been within the last decade, so you've got at least a 25-year elapse between the National Commission and our rethinking, Ruth Faden, my wife, right? We began to think that as changes were being made in modern clinical settings, advanced clinical settings in major institutions, and also in the practice of research of various sorts, this didn't seem to work all that well. This, what I think I initiated the term in our project of a segregation model versus an integration model. The segregation model too much segregated them. It kept research too far from practice. So one of the first things that we were doing, and I say we because I didn't sit at my desk and think, it was mostly through discussion with people like Ruth and Nancy Cass, and then eventually Peter Pronovost and Stephen Goodman and Sean Tunis were all sitting around the table. We batted this around for 2 years. And of course, there was then, I think, a steep evolution in all of our thinking. And we came to think this bifurcation model, this segregation model, is not the right way to think about these issues at all, and certainly not the right way to think about oversight mechanisms. What kind of oversight should be introduced into the system? So we really began to rethink the thing from the foundations up. To go back to your original question, what I now think is what the National Commission came up with may have been a very good document for the time to figure out what the boundaries were and to bring at least one domain, the research domain, under an oversight system that was a reasonably good oversight system. And I think there have been a lot of people, very good people in bioethics who've been involved in that over the years, that say the oversight and regulation and so on. But our thought is it's time to rethink that system and to talk a lot more about the integration between research and practice, especially in an era in which we're looking to what the Institute of Medicine calls learning healthcare systems, in which there'll be an extremely rapid delivery of information, sometimes from internally within an institution, but potentially from every institution in the world. Every country will be feeding data into a database. The model that we worked with early on was pediatric cancer, because pediatric cancer has gotten so much feedback, so much transmission of information, such a rapid development in a difficult area over the years. Imagine that being accelerated in virtually every institution where you get immediate feedback of information about what's working and what's not working in Buenos Aires, in Tokyo, in every country in Europe and so on, being fed into our institutions. We think it's really going to change the picture. and that it really no longer will be sensible in the way which it has been sensible to talk about a segregation of research and practice. Now, that's going to take a long time, and of course it's going to occur mostly at the beginning in healthcare institutions that dispense healthcare, but that need information in order to improve the care. Oh, it's already happening with places like Geisinger, to some extent, Intermountain, and so on. This will rapidly accelerate, so we believe. But it's an evolutionary process. We do not have a single learning healthcare system in the sense in which a learning healthcare system is envisaged as a core. We have no pure, so to speak, learning healthcare system, but we will, right? There's going to be an evolutionary process. Then you have a lot of people who now are outside of the domain of what we're talking about as integration. Right now, anyway, something like pharmaceutical clinical trials really are segregated for the most part. Even there, you have to make distinctions. So it'll be a long time before everything becomes into an integrated system. But we think that the time has come to rethink both the boundaries of research and practice, the nature of research and practice, and certainly the oversight systems. Now, one of the things that underlies our change of thinking goes back to what I said earlier about the National Commission and the Congress being willing to regulate research but not willing to regulate clinical medicine. One of the major things that we think you have to rethink is what an oversight system should be for clinical medicine. And here's why, and I think this is very interesting from a primer perspective. The view has long been that research is risky, but practice is a matter of accepting therapy in which the best interest of the patient is at hand, so it doesn't need something like oversight systems. We think the evidence is mounting at the present time to indicate that assumption is false. That is to say, if you had to choose between what's the riskier domain, if you want to put it in terms of boundaries and domains, it's probably riskier in clinical medicine than it is in research, in which case the system makes no sense. What you would want in the way of an oversight system is protection against risk, not protection against researchers who do bad things with you. So you have to rethink the whole system in that regard. So that's sort of the evolution of my thinking, greatly assisted by my colleagues that I mentioned earlier.